In this session of BimlFlex, we're going to be looking at actually bringing data in from source and staging it into Snowflake. So what we're going to go through is we're just going to look at incorporating data and bringing data into the cloud, the couple of different options that you have there. We're going to look at how we've built the source to staging Snowflake template and some of the challenges we faced and how we've addressed that. And then I'm going to show you how we've just go into BimlFlex and actually show you a demo there, right? Great. So first, let's look at incorporating data. So what we're going to do is we're going to be using our Excel add-in and connect to a data source. And we're going to use the same sample data source that Snowflake uses because later on in our next sessions, when we look at our data vault and data mart templates, we will be looking at using our templates and running it against large data set. We're going to bring in some source metadata. That metadata gets published to a metadata repository in the back end. And then from that metadata repository in the back end, we're actually going to go ahead and pull that metadata into Biml Studio and build out the Snowflake code and just point it out. It's really as simple as that. But first, let's just look at how BimlFlex works and how we're going to get in the data into Snowflake. So the first thing we do is we pull the data from whichever data source you have. We pull the metadata in from there and it gets published into a metadata repository where all the data mappings are being done in the back end there. We're not going to be looking at Data Vault Accelerator or applying any business rules in this session. That's for a different session. Then what we can do with that metadata, you can choose to go down an on-premise route where you normally go from source to targets from a database to a database, or you can just go and say let's take it up into the Azure cloud here, or we can go into the Snowflake. Snowflake Data Warehouse here, and we only support this release. We're just doing the source of staging, and we are working on our data vault templates and our data mart templates. So we're going to be focusing on bringing the data into Snowflake over here. So what BimlFlex will do right now, what we're going to be looking at, and we're just focusing on Snowflake right now. So what we're going to do here is we're going to move data from data sources. We're going to put that data into a Snowflake Stage first. And then we're going to load it into staging and persistent staging. So we're going to really stop over at this level here. Just to let you know, is that switching on persistent staging with history or without history, those are the optional settings that you can do in BimlFlex. So you could actually just go from source into staging and then take that data going forward. But for now, we're going to put it into a persistent staging or historized staging database. And then later on, as we bring those templates for Snowflake on board, those templates already exist for Azure SQL Data Warehouse and SQL VMs and also any other database source or target that you want to do. So let's look at what does the Snowflake template, before I jump into code and metadata and show you how it works, let me just explain to you the process of the Snowflake template. So the first thing we want to do here is we want to be able to connect to multiple sources. So we're going to extract the data from any source that you can really think of. And that data gets extracted into a file. That file can be parallelized, or we can put it across multiple threads. In other words, you could have a table, and I'll show this how easy we've implemented this in the BimlFlex. You can have a table that is quite large, and instead of pushing all of that data into a single file and uploading that single file into Snowflake Stage, we take that file and we can split it across multiple smaller files, which gives you it's almost linear, the amount of performance that gives you when you load that data into Snowflake. So what we're going to do is we're going to pull the data out, we're going to prepare it, we're going to convert it to UTF-8, and we're going to compress it. And this bit over here, we actually use SnowSQL, which is the utility provided by Snowflake. That data then gets copied up into Snowflake Stage. The reason we at Verigence decided to support Snowflake Stage first is because then you don't have to worry about whether you are using AWS or whether you're using Azure. It goes into Snowflake Stage, and then from there we load it into the database. That is also what we, in our conversations with Snowflake, that the process that they recommend. And from there, once it's in Snowflake Stage, we will kick off the SQL, the ELT code on top, and we will copy the data out of the files into a staging table. And if we will have persistent staging configured, so we will also load that into a persistent staging in the same process. And then really the data is ready for discovery. You can then put virtual discovery marts over the top of it, or the data from this sort of staging, persistent staging later is now ready to move into your data vault or your data marts, whichever the process that you want to do over here. But I'll show you how quick and easy it is to get your data into Snowflake and actually start doing some discovery on your data. So without further ado, let's jump straight into a BimlFlex demo and I'll take you through this. All right, so as I said, we're going to use our Excel add-in and we're going to connect to a source system metadata here. Before I connect to that, let me just take you through what configuration options you have at this stage here. So here I've defined a source connection of, we're going to pull some data out of a SQL Server. There's some more metadata on the right, which I'm not going to focus on right now. What we're going to do is we're going to say this is the record source TCPH, which is the Snowflake sample database. We are going to persist history. So if you didn't want to have a historized staging layer or historized persistent staging layer, you would leave that as blank or no. And then this is quite important here. This is the number of threads. So think about number of threads at this connection level of how many files do I want to create in parallel. You can make this 16, 32, whatever. I've left it as 4 just so I can show you. It's easier to show it as 4. So that's the first one there, the number of threads. The second thing, threading option you have here is at the batch level here, where you can go ahead and actually say, well, how many threads do I want to run in parallel? So this means how many source tables do I want to extract in parallel? So I'm going to make this 2 over here, and I'm just going to go and publish that metadata there. So that metadata is now persisting in our database. And then, the last thing here is really at a connection level here. What we're saying is and I'm not going to go through all of this, but what we're doing is we're saying, I want to go from this source and this source metadata here. I want to stage it. I also want to persist it. And eventually, I'm going to put that in a data vault, which is outside of the scope of this presentation here. So the first thing I need to do here now, and imagine here that you're starting off, you want to get some data into Snowflake. The first thing you want to do is you want to bring some metadata in. So I'm just going to go in here. Again, we have a video that just focuses on importing metadata. But for now, I'm just going to go here. I'm going to select all of the tables that I want to bring in here. And I'm going to do a couple of settings down the bottom here. Don't worry about it too much. And I'm going to hit import metadata. This now brings in all the tables for me. It has also brought in all the column metadata for me. And if your system has relationships in the system, it would have brought in, one to many, it would bring in your relationships also there. And it would have brought in some additional metadata here, covered in detail in other webinars here. So that's all I need to do. So let's just say you have a really good clean system that has primary keys, that has relationships and foreign keys and all that kind of stuff that is easy for BimlFlex to interpret. We've brought in that metadata, and that's all we need to do. Now we head over to Biml Studio, which is where the code is built out. So BimlFlex, the Excel add-in, is where you manage your metadata. Biml Studio is where the code gets built out here. So all I need to do at this stage is hit the refresh metadata button, and now it pulls all of that metadata that I've just published in Excel into my database. It pulls that down. And as you can see here, I'm creating multiple files here. 4 files here for everything here. But let me just say the line item table here is quite big, and instead of 4 files there, I want to make that, let's just say 8 files. It's quite easy. I'll just go over to my metadata here, to the objects, and right at the end of this metadata here, a little bit too far, right at the end of this metadata here, I have another number of threads here, which I can make 8. So if I make this 8 and set it, so again, I can control the number of files or threads that I want to produce at a connection level for all the tables in that connection, and I can override it selectively at a object level here. So if I refresh metadata here, what you'll see now is that this line item here will become 8 files. Okay. I will now also have all of the tables that I need to create for my Snowflake database, as well as the packages here. So the only thing that's left up for me to do now is to create my tables on the Snowflake side. So I go to generate scripts here and I say generate my Snowflake table script, which is going to give me my source to staging scripts. Now we are still working with Snowflake and working on this, where we can actually get the continuous deployment worked out and figured out for Snowflake. Snowflake doesn't have a sort of backpack deployment or incremental deployment stuff. So we're still working through that a little bit at the moment. But ultimately, I've got no tables here in my Snowflake. I just want to run all the queries and I hit run. And this will now go ahead and create all of the tables that I need for my staging layer and my persistent staging layer here. So that just goes ahead here and just runs that up. And there we're done. So if I refresh on this side here, there is all of my staging tables that I need and all of my persistent staging tables ODS. Now, don't worry too much about the naming. There's many different ways that you configure the naming conventions inside of BimlFlex. So for now, all I need to go ahead now here is go ahead and just hit the build button. And this is going to build all the packages, and then I'll take you through what those packages look like and some of the technical things that we from Verigence had to solve. All right, so the build has been completed successfully. So let me head over to Visual Studio here and just show you what the package looks like. Now remember, the first thing I want to show you is that we created 2 threads on the batch. So if I look at the batch here, that's going to execute it. We will see here that it's going to have 2 packages that's going to get executed in parallel. So we've got 2 packages that gets executed in parallel, and this could be as many packages as you want in your batch. And then let's look at a package here, and then I'll just kick it off and let it run and get the data up there. So what does the package look like itself? So here we go. So the first bit here is there's some orchestration to see whether the package should run or not. Then there's a data flow task that very simply just goes and gets the data, connects to your source, comes down here, and then literally just puts it into as many files as you've defined thread. So if this was 18 or 16, it'll have 16 or 32 of these files here. Very simple process. Remember, all we're trying to do here is get some data out, put it into a file, do some preparation of the file there. The next thing we do here is we actually convert the file to UTF-8. Now this is very important. This is very important for Azure SQL Data Warehouse, but it's also important for Snowflake. So it really just gets the file into the right format. Then we use SnowSQL to copy the file and compress the file into Snowflake Stage. And then here is the, I suppose, the magic that we've done from BimlFlex, Verigence's point of view is we actually had to create a custom SSIS custom task to go and load the data out. One of the when working with Snowflake, one of the things about their API and their ODBC API is that you can only make one call at a time, and if you wanted to call a multiple, so if I just show you here real quick, I'll just look at the variable here. So the Snowflake code that we want to execute on the server is quite a chunky piece of code here, right? So I'll just grab this out here because we need to go and do quite a bit of things in the context of identifying deltas and all kinds of stuff here. But as you can see, there's 205 lines of code, and there's multiple statements there that we need to do, and to get the data into stage, and to do persistent stage with history or without history. All of that stuff is logic that we need to do. So we needed a mechanism inside of SSIS to orchestrate that code there. So what we've done is we've basically written a SSIS custom task that Verigence has written, and then we do some housekeeping where we remove the files over here. So let me go ahead here and just execute this. And let it run, and then I'll show you the results on the other side here. So now I'm just going to go and execute this packages here and let it run. All right, so this bit over here is actually using SnowSQL, and as you can see here, it's moving the data up and compressing it in flight and moving the data up into Snowflake Stage. So as you can see there, it's also compressing the data as it goes up into Snowflake. All right, so the packages have completed successfully. So now what we should be able to see here is in my databases here, I will have in my BimlFlex database here, I should be able to see all of my tables, and the data has been populated in all of those tables there. So thank you for watching this session. I do hope to see you in the next session, where we actually will be, once we have our data vault and the data mart templates, we will show you how that works. Thank you.